Welcome to another edition of Minot Matters here at the Dakota, and I'm Jonathan Starr. We are continuing our interviews with the mayoral candidates. Today we are joined by current mayor Mark Jantzer. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, acting mayor.
Acting mayor.
Yeah.
You didn't see that coming. That wasn't part of the cards when you were elected to city council this last time?
Well, no. I mean, obviously, April 1st was an abrupt transition, and but actually the system worked well.
It did.
We, in ordinance we have what happens if the mayor is absent or resigns, which is that the president of the city council becomes the acting mayor, and then the options are to continue in that mode, or as the electorate decided with a petition, we're having a special election. So, this is all kind of orderly.
Right.
And as we progress, into the heart of the campaign here between now and August 5th, we'll, hear all kinds of things from the four candidates and figure out, the electorate gets to figure out who they want to vote for.
Absolutely. So obviously getting appointed to the mayor position is one thing. It's another decision to actually decide to run, go have your name on a ballot, get voted in. When it was time to make that decision, what was kind of some of the determining factors that kind of propelled you to actually put your name into the race, go collect those signatures and actually do this? Well,
first and foremost, I love Minot, having lived here since 1977. And because I have served on the council since 2008, I feel like I have seen a lot of different issues come and go, seen a lot of different aldermen come and go. I've worked with multiple mayors, so I think I have a pretty clear sense of how things work and how things could work. And then, sometimes events overtake previous plans. And so, obviously, we need to have somebody in the mayor's position who I think has some experience in terms of leadership of things in the community, on the city council as well. And so it seemed to me that it was sort of important for me to step up and continue to serve, but in maybe a different capacity than I have in the past.
A question that we have asked the candidates is, if you were elected, next year comes around, obviously this is for 10 months, just under a year.
Sure.
I understand this isn't about the 2026 race, but that is forefront on people's minds as far as this is a short term, and then we're looking at the long term coming up really fast.
Sure.
What have your thoughts been so far on running for reelection, or whatever that might be, however that needs to be termed, in 2026?
Well, having made, it's one decision to run for the unexpired term, but it's kind of the same decision to run in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So my view is if I'm elected, I don't intend to be a short-term mayor. I
Gotcha.
will run again in the spring.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, because whomever is elected, I think there needs to be continuity.
Yeah, I agree. I think if the citizens make a choice, I think chances are they would, want that person to run in the spring, and I fully understand that and will do that.
Right. Now, you've been on city council, you mentioned it, since 2008. What are some of the key things, some of the accomplishments that you kind of look back over the years that you've been able to be a part of, that you think kind of shows why your leadership could be impactful over these next 10 months and potentially over the next 5 years?
Well, there's obviously one big one, and that is that I was on the city council when we approved the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Plan.
Yeah.
Which was a really, difficult time for the council and for the whole community. Some of those town halls that we had at the auditorium where, you know, a lot of emotion and distress from what had happened and what citizens were confronted with came out. But we, you know, Minot committed to providing the local share for building flood protection for this community. And that process is well underway. The legislature just concluded, provided about $81 million of funding for this biennium to continue moving that forward. And I made multiple trips to the legislature to talk to representatives and senators and the Senate Majority Leader about what Minot's need was, and to dispel rumors of, you know, that things were off the rails or, you know, that kind of thing, and to make sure that we got those funds. This is not by any means a solo thing. I mean, David from the Service River Joint Board, Ryan Ackerman, these folks were all within that process, and frankly had the facts and figures to back up what we were trying to say. So, right. But certainly the city of Minot government has a role in that. The other thing I guess I would say was when we changed forms of government from the ward system to the current system, I was chairman of the committee that did that after the citizens voted for it. So that involved, you know, a lot of people, some of whom had been for the change, some of whom had not been for the change. So we went through that process, and we came up with some ways of doing business that are still in place today. Maybe one other one would be a couple of years ago, I chaired the Pay and Benefits Committee related to making an evaluation of what our current approach was to pay and benefits, everything from vacation and insurance to how we regularly check to make sure that our wages and the way that we're paying fit into the marketplace and what's going on there. So out of that came some recommended changes, and some of them were not universally appealing to everybody, but we did get some good work done in that committee, and came out with that. So those would be a couple examples of maybe what you're thinking about.
Those are huge. First off, on flood control, I think a term that comes up in that is Minot being a regional partner, in that we help as we should, because we have a huge impact in Ward County and the surrounding areas. Obviously, flood control is something that it's been well documented. This is a process that's going to continue. It has to. It takes time. There was the flood meeting that was had recently. Sounds like we're getting close to milestone one being completed, where 60% of people, I think, are going to be able to be protected. So that way they're correct. So good things are happening. There's progress that's happening here, and people are going to start feeling that progress now, which is probably about time, because I think people were getting tired. So it's going to be good motivation to keep it going. It's like Mario Kart. We hit the little speed boost in there. So good things, now we might have some energy to keep going now. But what kind of regional partner should we be playing? Like, how should that relationship work to be healthy in the area? How much should we require of those others that we're helping around, Velva, Surrey, but Sawyer, Burlington? How should that relationship work? Is it working properly?
Well, I think that, first of all, the need the need for Minot to commit to the local share, because we're a regional hub for all kinds of things, was critical back when that choice was made. I mean, there was really no other way. Because in order to get moving on it, to get rolling, somebody had to make that commitment, because the state and the feds were only going to provide funds with the local share.
Right.
And so there are a couple of things that people don't always remember. One is that there's a big chunk of our city sales tax that is paid by folks who come in here and shop from Velva and Kenmare and wherever, and so there's a significant portion of flood control local share that we derive from sales tax. So you can kind of rationalize that those folks that are coming here to shop are paying through the sales tax, which is the vehicle that is used to pay for the local share of flood control by and large.
You're right.
Is it a perfect system? Probably not. Would it be great if Velva or McLean County or whoever, would say, hey, we'll, put in some kind of tax or do something so that we can pay more. That'd be great. But a lot of these, rural counties and towns, are strapped too. They're trying to, they're dealing with old infrastructure and trying to keep things going just the way we are, but on a smaller scale and with less dollars to work with.
Right.
So it's very difficult for them. And the other element of this is the rural communities. So, we're very focused on what happens in Minot with our flood protection. But everybody in this reach of the river is also concerned. So if you're a landowner with pasture or cropland adjacent to the river, you're as concerned about that flooding, because that's your income, as we are about our houses and businesses being flooded. And so that's another important element to remember, is that this was a decision that was taken in part so that it wasn't going to be a situation where Minot was doing everything for what's within our city limits, or what would it take to protect us, but that we had the best interests of everybody in this reach of the river in mind. And that is the position that the Souris River Joint Board has taken, and that's why it's worked, frankly, up to this point.
Makes sense. Another impact that you mentioned was with the pay ranges and all that, with city employees, city staff. What should the relationship between mayor and the city staff, what should that look like? You've been around, you've probably seen a few different types of these relationships over the years.
Well, I think that, I think the mayor needs to have a really thorough understanding of the different departments and how they work and how they're funded, and what some of the challenges are that those department heads face, and that we're in a labor market where we have to compete with other people who are other organizations who are looking for people with those similar skill sets, and we have to be competitive. We don't necessarily have to pay the most, but we have to be competitive. And if we can make the city a good place to work, as defined by the workers, not necessarily just our point of view, but as defined by the workers, then I think that's important. So I think the mayor can. Obviously, a lot of those are council decisions in terms of,
Right.
What's in the budget for
Yep.
pay raises in a given year and all of those kinds of things. But I think the mayor can help lead those discussions and make sure that we, continually understand what the dynamics are. And then the other thing is, I think the mayor can be a voice that expresses appreciation and gratitude.
Right.
We have 450-ish or so employees, and slightly more right now because of seasonal hires, but those are typically, interns or part-timers, and they're going to be gone in the fall. But to express to those folks on a regular basis that, you're out there jobbing it every day, digging up water mains that break, or patching streets, or going on fire calls, or going on calls for service for the police department, or doing engineering out of public works. Those are important jobs, and it means a lot to people just to hear somebody say, "You're doing a good job, and we thank you for it."
Right. Yeah. Providing that leadership. You don't necessarily have the direct oversight over the employees, correct? As mayor?
Right. So, this is an important thing that people need to understand. Our mayor's role is as a part-time mayor,
Right.
Is different from a form of government where. So I have a friend, Pat Collins, down in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and he's a mayor, but he's in a strong mayor form of government down there. So it's a full-time job.
Right.
And he is the direct supervisor of the department heads and the people that work for the city.
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
That's why we have a city manager.
Right.
So, Harold Stewart, city manager, is the supervisor and boss, if you will, of the department heads, and that's his job. That's his role. He's a professional at that. That's what he went to. That's what's his educational background, right, and his experience in a couple other communities where he had that same job.
Mm-hmm. So this is an off the wall question, but I think it's an interesting deal because Minot, obviously, the city manager position is what it is. We won't go into that too far, but should Minot have? Do you see a frame of time when maybe the mayor position does kind of broaden a little bit? We talk about full-time mayor and all that, and I'm not necessarily talking directly about that, but having more of a hybrid role where there is more of an impact with the city staff as well. Would something like that be healthy for Minot? And I pose this question because from the citizen side, there's been a lot of questions about trust and people. Obviously, this whole election was brought on because citizens actually signed to have this election. This wasn't a regular scheduled election. There's been stuff where citizens have been beginning to be active, maybe in a different way than what first thought, but being active in wanting to be active in these decisions. Would expanding that role be something that might be beneficial for the city of Minot, or you don't really see that as being a good thing?
Well, I guess I don't have any experience with that. So this is pretty much all pure speculation,
right?
Without really knowing how that would look. I think it is. One of the things the mayor does currently is meet weekly, if not more often, with the city manager,
right,
to have an understanding of what issues may be percolating or what is going on. And in our system, how that works is dependent on those two individuals being able to deal with issues and work on them and work through them.
Right.
the mayor certainly has the ability to, make requests and to ask for certain actions to be taken. But again, some of that goes back to the council. It's not,
Right.
being mayor is not being king of the city.
Right.
And I don't think that's necessarily bad.
Right.
Could there be a additional authority or could the role be added to from what we have now? Could the system be changed? Certainly could.
Right.
But I would point out as well that any system you go to is going to have advantages and disadvantages relative to the system that you have now.
Yes.
And we certainly found that out by changing our form of government a number of years ago. The advantages of the ward system where, people sort of knew who their two aldermen were because of geography.
Right.
Had some advantages, had some disadvantages as well, because sometimes it didn't take very many votes to get elected in some of those wards, and so some people, kind of stayed on because of name recognition when maybe folks would have rather had somebody else.
Right.
But in the current system, everybody runs at large, and everybody is available to any of the citizens, so that's not a bad thing.
Right.
The fact that the mayor votes in every issue is not a bad thing, versus the old way where the mayor only voted to break a tie.
Right.
So anything we want to try, anything the citizens want to try is certainly doable through the proper methodology. I think for instance, to change to a strong mayor type of government, full-time mayor, I think would probably take, I would want at least that would come through a vote of the people.
Right. Absolutely.
Not some other,
Not just the council
Yeah.
or whatever. No, I think that's good. I think even hearing the relationship that is between the mayor and city manager is important, because I think that part gets overlooked sometimes by people that are just going about their life. One of the things that you've emphasized is the need for steady leadership, proven leadership. Obviously, this is something that'd be necessary in the immediate. What does that look for Minot? What does steady leadership look? What does proven leadership actually look like in action? How is that going to help?
Well, I think it involves a couple of things. I think it involves having a way to talk about things without making it personal, and to deal with issues and difficulties in a steady-handed and professional way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's it's easy to be calm, cool, and collected when things are going great.
Right.
But I think it's helpful if people who are in the kind of leadership role that a mayor may find themselves in, you need something beyond that.
Right.
And I would point to some examples. For instance, during the flood, Kurt Zimbelman was our mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a huge amount of stress and difficulty there, but he was a steady guy.
Right.
And as opposed to, I remember when the hurricane hit New Orleans, there was an elected official in maybe the mayor of New Orleans, I think, and the crisis was such that the National Guard and the people that were coming in to help needed somebody steady and calm, and
Right.
He was so distressed himself that he couldn't
Provide that.
and so I've been through leading the community in a BRAC round or two where there was a chance that Minot Air Force Base might be closed, and of course we were successful in those efforts. But those are the kinds of things,
Right.
And that also applies to just a tough issue on the city council agenda at any given meeting.
You guys had a few of those since the turnover.
And I think that without getting without getting preachy or without getting arrogant, I think a mayor who can just sort of point out that there's maybe a way we could look at this and get to a good decision.
So what do you see? So you have the steady leadership that propels. What do you see as a vision for Minot? Obviously, probably the immediate is just bringing that stability. But over the next few months and maybe even beyond that, where's Minot going? What would be some vision for Minot, some direction for Minot?
Well, I think many people in the community would like to see Minot continue to grow,
right?
And that the growth be based on sustainable kinds of things. So, so for instance, I think it's important that we continue with economic development efforts.
Right.
And I think also the other thing that I see in the future is more collaboration with what I will call our durable partners.
Okay.
So where we've been successful in some of these things is where we've partnered with MSU, Trinity Medical Center, Minot Park District.
Right.
We have successfully done things like the technical training center for dental hygienists and assistants, as one example. With the conclusion of the legislature, there's funding for a MSU Trinity Health educational facility downtown, which will be a big boost to the city.
Good.
I mean, so these are the kinds of things. With the Park District, we have supported their efforts to have activities in the community that draw sports teams and other folks into the community who stay at our hotels, eat at our restaurants, shop at our mall and downtown. Again, those are all things that, enlarge the effect that we can have, whether it's through, Chamber of Commerce and the hundreds of businesses that are part of that, or whether it's through Visit Minot, who are the folks that work to make sure that these events come to town.
Right.
So I think that's what I see. Where some of the efforts have not been as successful have been with partners who, not due to what the city did, because we held up our end, but through their own difficulties, failed to hold up their end,
right?
Which we don't have any control over. And so when you think about things like the parking garages, which is old as can be, but somebody
still stands out.
Somebody went after me on social media the other day about that. Those kinds of things. The Broadway Circle project where, it took us, this is the third iteration, maybe the
Right.
fourth of an entity operating that. And prior ones weren't things that the city did that caused problems with
Right.
with the arrangement. It was what happened with the partners that were involved. And believe me, we in those. I mean, we tried as best as you can through having third-party accounting folks look at, like Epic, for instance. Did that all make sense for the Big M building, for instance? And
Right.
yeah, it appeared to at the time.
Yep.
So, that the council made a decision based on what we knew at the time. And you don't have a crystal ball into the future. I wish we did. But those are the kinds of things. So partnering with our durable partners and, very carefully evaluating other opportunities with outside partners. For instance, we are still engaged with Edgewood Vista regarding construction on one of the parking facilities on the
Gotcha.
central parking ramp. And, that was supposed to happen years and years ago.
Gotcha.
But it would be a great thing for downtown if that works out.
For sure.
But it's got to be the right deal. It's got to be the right relationship. Everybody's got to have the right amount of skin in the game.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely need commitment there. So talking about these partnerships, and you also mentioned funding. Recently, Minot got hit somewhat hard by federal funding being pulled back, which is outside the scope of you as mayor. You can't go advocate for that very well at the federal level. With the Job Corps, though, and so there was a bunch of displaced students, and obviously now there'll be employees potentially that will be looking for work elsewhere. The question is, though, is there something that Minot is able to do for core things? I think the Job Corps is considered to be pretty core by a lot of people around Minot, that it was very essential. It did a lot of good for Minot. Providing alternate funding sources, obviously not through a city budget is not what I'm asking, but just helping to provide alternative funding for things like that are directly reliant on federal funding or other funding that may dry up at a moment's notice.
That would be a really desirable thing to be able to orchestrate.
Yeah.
I think we're early in the ripple effects of that. I can tell you, I was on the phone last Friday with one of the Job Corps directors over there and with Senator Hoven's office talking about, what can be done. I was really disappointed that the methodology of, if you're gonna close down Job Corps, how about having a soft landing as opposed to a crash landing?
Yeah,
and,
for
and
sure.
I guess that was what bothered me most. While on the other hand, there's also this talk continuously of the need for and the trend toward vocational education, which doesn't seem to quite balance. I mean, that's what Job Corps was doing.
Right.
So maybe it needed reform. Maybe it needs reform, or maybe it needed reform.
knows?
Whatever. But crash landing it with students who are 80% through their course, but they're not going to get a certificate. That, to me, that was not a very well chosen approach.
Yeah.
Is there potential for, and this is the kind of thing that I was talking about a minute ago, are there partners who could, expand what's going on at the existing facility downtown in a different facility, whether it's part of the old Trinity Hospital, whether it's the current facility that Job Corps occupied? I mean, those are all things that are very well worth exploring.
Right.
And I would certainly be very interested in being a party to that effort in those discussions. But on the other hand, I also will tell you that there's been also some talk on the council about these gall-darn federal programs. Gosh, they give us money, but boy, we have strings, and there's administrative. Okay, so here's the deal. There's a federal government, there's a state government, and we're local government.
Right. Yeah.
That's reality.
Yeah.
Could we say, well, we're just not going to play. We're going to walk away from federal help because we just have sort of an antipathy to it because it does require, some things on our part. Yeah, we could do that. Is that a smart move? I'm not quite sure it is in the world that we live in.
Right.
So, I had the pleasure of swearing in a couple of new police officers a week or so ago. And I was kind of surprised. It was my first opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
They were more nervous than I was. And so I asked Acting Chief Plessis afterwards, I was surprised at that. And he said, for them, it's a huge deal.
Wow.
And I remember from the oath, they swear to uphold federal, state, and local law. Mm-hmm. And so that's reality. And I guess, you either choose to accept that or you're making up your own.
Right.
That's kind of
That's fair.
Kind of where I'm coming from.
That's fair.
So I think, to your point, it's early, but I think there could very well be some conversation as to how maybe there's a way with some state help and whatever could be done locally to sort of pull together some sort of locally or state operated vocational training.
Yeah.
Additional to what we have, assuming Job Corps is gone.
Right. That'd be great. Good.
I was going to say, there are some things like Minot Public Schools has done up at the technical training center that they have up in what used to be the daycare up at the old Cognizant building, now Minot North. You can graduate high school with your CDL.
That's incredible.
And so I think there's more that can be done along those lines.
For sure. Switching gears, talking about public safety, the police department. You've referenced that department a couple times. Obviously, right now they're in the process. You guys are part of that process at City Council, but the police department's in the process of getting a new chief. There's currently an acting one in place. We won't talk about names because that will all work itself out. I think the biggest question, though, that I have and that others may have is what leadership qualities, what are the things that are needed out of the police department as they work to rebuild the morale and set this new direction for the police department? What are some of the things that need to come out of that position?
I think the number one thing that the new chief needs is to have or be able to earn the trust of the officers, of the people that he, and I'm going to say not he and she because we have male candidates,
right?
But that's the number one thing.
Okay.
And then have a leadership style that is both demanding in the sense of standards, and when standards are not met, taking corrective action, and also inclusive in terms of making people feel and understand how they're part of the team and that they're important to the overall effort.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't that everything is falling apart at the police department, but there were, you know, some incidents where probably the former chief should have taken more aggressive action, should have informed the city manager more completely what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are very fixable things.
Right.
And so I think we are expecting the city manager's recommendation before the next council meeting, and we'll have an opportunity to look at that and talk about it and decide which direction to go.
Is this something that should be tabled till there's a full council? I kid. You don't have to answer that question. We'll find out. We'll find out on Monday.
So, I mean, I'll just speak to that. I think it's important that we make a good hire as soon as possible for that position,
right?
And that we move on. You know, I voted for, which failed, but I voted for bringing in the gentleman from West Fargo, who was a retired chief from there, who had dealt with a lot of the kinds of things that Minot has experienced: death of an officer, you know, those kinds of things, suicides, and so we didn't do that.
Right.
I would say that things have gone better than some maybe would have expected in the meantime.
It's good.
And so I think, you know, the sooner we get a decision made on this hire, I think the better for the community and the better for the department.
Absolutely. I do want to follow up. I think that's great for the police department. Obviously, I made the joke about tabling it. That's not going to happen. There are two issues. Well, it may happen. I don't know about that. But there are two issues that are tabled for sure right now. There's a flock security system, and there's the liquor license cap. First off, you don't have to spend. People can go back and watch city council and understand your viewpoints on these issues. But with the flock system, is this something that you're for or against? And this one's probably the hardest one of the two, because there's a lot of variables in there that could change up to the time of the actual vote.
Yeah, I guess unlike some of the aldermen who voted against this, so I spent the last 22 years of my work career in a technology job. And so I do have a bit of an understanding, and I appreciate that when new technologies emerge, there is probably needed concern with how they're going to be used, and you know, who's going to be able to access information and all that. You know, that said, I think you balance that with what are the policies and procedures that are in place, who can access it, who can authorize it, and look at do the benefits outweigh the risks?
Right.
And so I think, while we probably aren't there yet in terms of reaching that comfort level. I think we could maybe get there.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Pittner made a attempt to do that at the last
Right.
time
Yep.
it was discussed. I think, the Alderman Blessum particularly, but and the other three members maybe as well, or whoever, whatever the mix was that voted against it, that got us to the 3-3. Obviously it wasn't there, and Blessum basically said it isn't ever going to be there for him. So,
Right.
So that's where we are. I may not be there yet, but I think I could get there. I guess I'll tell you that.
Yeah, makes sense. And then liquor license, is this something that needs to be looked at the level that it was being looked at, where we're talking about removing a cap, or is the cap still fine in place, maybe having to make adjustments of increasing it maybe a little bit?
Yeah. So some would say that, this is a solution looking for a problem.
Right.
Lifting the caps, that is. And I can frankly see both sides of the issue. If you're there again, I actually had one vote because of the transition to acting mayor.
Yeah.
I showed up for the meeting of that ad hoc committee at the last meeting.
Okay.
And so the motion was, do we send this recommendation to the city council? And the recommendation was this multiple choice thing of, you can pick from A, B, C, or D.
Right.
And so I go, yeah, I'll vote for that, because let's move this thing along. I mean, you can't have these ad hoc committees meeting ad infinitum.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had a couple that have kind of done that. So I think there are some things that committee maybe didn't get to that they could have,
right?
Such as, should there be some other kind of full retail liquor license? If you're a company like one of the grocery stores in town that has 4 different locations and 4 of those things,
right?
Are they different than a sole proprietor guy who just has a bar?
Right.
I kind of think so.
Yep.
So I'd like to see a little more creativity, and maybe the prices are different too.
Mm-hmm.
Could we have instead of completely getting rid of all the stuff that we have now, could we say, for the next 5 years, we're going to add 2 liquor licenses,
right,
at X dollars?
Yep.
I guess I think there needs to be acknowledgement of what the past has been and how much some of these folks have paid for the liquor license under the licenses under the previous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the multiple choice, maybe with some modifications that, like what I just described, of some additional kinds of licenses or whatever.
Yeah.
The one that I favored was really the more a version of maybe the Kevin Black plan, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it maintains a certain bar of entry financially for somebody to get into the business, and two, I think one of the things that's really hard to accept is that the city would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars out over some period of time to pay off the existing license holders.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where I'm at on it. I think there's a little more work to do, and maybe we'll get to that.
Final question on those. Obviously, if you're elected, and this goes for 3 of the candidates, if you're elected as mayor, then there's going to be appointment of your seat. If there's these issues that are being tabled, there's going to be a lot of conversation about who that 7th member of council should be, simply because they're going to be, in theory, we haven't had actual votes on these issues because they ended up getting tabled, but they're going to be, in theory,
the deciding vote. If everybody holds steady,
right?
That would be, yeah.
How does it happen?
Well, so I think we have. I think there are really three kind of approaches. One is by appointment, and we've done it in the past where we went back to the previous election and picked the next highest vote getter. In one case, the election was very recently passed.
Okay.
Here we don't have that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. The other approach has been to interview people, so
Mm-hmm.
sort of do a call, as they would say in the entertainment business, and have people come in and not really audition, but apply and be interviewed, and then we've picked from one of those people. And I think the other possibility is to have another election, and do it that way.
Which will be tight on timeline for that one, but yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you do that, then okay. So
It's
There is another thing though, and
Okay.
that is that the timeline might be I think the legislature just passed something that said, in effect, it adjusted the parameters under which you can have a special election.
Okay.
And the tendency was to push the special election to the next general election,
Right.
which would mean June or November.
Yep.
So let's say they say, okay, you can't have another election for alderman until June.
Yeah.
We could be in that circumstance.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I think it's important that as quickly as we can,
Right.
given all of that stuff, that we get to a odd numbered number of voters on the council.
Do you foresee at all there being a chance where you guys go through an interview process, or you go and it's the next highest vote getter from the previous election, and there's just not a consensus that's reached on council, because right there's another area where there could be a 3-3.
Sure, there could be another one of those 3-3 ties, and it loses.
Yeah.
So,
That's just one of those tough situations.
I move that we not appoint Jonathan Starr to the city council, and it could end up in a 3-3 tie.
It's gonna be an interesting thing to watch. One of those subcurrents of things that is gonna be a big deal once the mayor race is taken care of.
Well, and there's even more fundamental things coming right up. I mean, passing the budget.
There's gonna be some discussions had.
If there's too many 3-3 ties on what we do about certain things, it's going to be a tough slog.
Yeah.
And my hope would be that that we can work together enough to get through some of that.
Right.
But everybody gets one vote.
That's the thing.
That's how it works.
Should we change it where the mayor gets a vote and a half? So that way on a if you have a 7-member council, it doesn't matter, but on a
that would be a twist to your strong mayor
it would
idea.
Be. It would be.
So you get a vote and a half.
Yeah, there you go. On a 3-3 vote, it'd matter. All right, we're coming to the end here. I want to ask you this: just what are your priorities if elected? I know we've probably talked about a lot of them already, but just for clarity's sake, what are some of the top 3 priorities that you have if elected to mayor? What does this look like?
Well, I think obviously the first thing is to adequately fund in a sustainable way our essential city services.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of things where we're the only game in town.
Right.
And if they aren't adequately funded, if we don't maintain and replace our equipment, if we don't hire people who are competent and able to do that work, we've got problems. Second one would be to continue to focus on recruitment for the police department. We need to get the police chief hired, as I mentioned earlier, and we need to focus on recruitment so that we can fill those vacant positions. And hopefully the combination of new chief and additional effort will allow us to do that. Third thing is obviously finish NAWS, continue with flood control. Third thing is I would like to see additional effort placed on getting the payback and the value out of some of the investments we've made in technology, and particularly some of our software like our ERP program and some of the subsystem programs that we're using for tracking assets for the field application that our inspectors are using, some of those kinds of things. I think there's some data mining and some good information now that we've implemented those and had them for a little while. I think I'd like to see more work done on that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, working with our important long-term community durable partners and other subdivisions of government to get some things accomplished that benefit the city.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you coming on today. If somebody wants to support you, find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can call me at 701-833-3404. And I have a campaign webpage or a Facebook page that you can go to, which is you can email me at jantzerforminot@gmail.com, and you can go to my Facebook page.
Very good. Awesome. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching this episode of Minot Matters, these mayoral editions of it. Be sure to show up on June 17th to the Mouse River Players Theater, 6 p.m. Doors open for the mayoral debate. It's going to be a great time. It'll also be live streamed on our channels here. Thanks for watching this episode. Have a great rest of your day.